So guys, listen to what I have to say very closely, okay? Right now I'm pulling up GC database because I do not have the resources on JP to build up these characters, but just trust. Listen up to what I have to say. And also I'm pretty sure I haven't seen anyone make a video on this team composition yet. That's why I'm telling you guys about it. In theory it sounds absolutely broken, and I'll tell you guys why. Alright. So now here there's the Festival King, right? Okay, I'm not going to go through his abilities because you can watch other videos on that. But it's because I'm talking about the team that might potentially become meta right here. So I'm going to tell you what exactly makes this team have potentially be like the new meta team. Okay, so this way. King's debuff card is an AoE poison and it lasts for 3 turns. I'm pretty sure this is 4 turns. If I'm pretty sure they buffed this to 4 turns, but they didn't change it or something. Yeah, shock lasts for 4 turns. I'm pretty sure this lasts for 4 turns as well. But if it's 3 turns, it's not as good, but it will still work. Okay, this is why. If you don't know his passive, if the enemy has like 2 or more poison, bleed, shock, or corrosion debuffs, he makes it so that the enemy team cannot cleanse any debuffs. They can still heal, but they cannot remove the debuffs, and this is important. And if there is 3 of them, if there are 3 debuffs, the enemy team loses 1 ultimate gauge at the start of their turn. Which means that if they have 5 out gauges but they have 3 debuffs applied on them, they cannot cleanse and they cannot get their out off because they'll lose 1 ultimate gauge. Okay. So yeah, King applies the first one, which is the 3 turn poison, but I'm pretty sure they buffed it to 4 turns. I'm pretty sure it's 4 turns. I'm just gonna take it as 4 turns, but if it's 3 turns then it's like slightly worse, but it will still work, trust. Okay. So now, Hendrickson increases damage of all allies debuff attack skills by 50%. And then on top of that, if you don't know what he does, he has 2 different AoE debuff cards. He has a 4-turn shock and a 2-turn bleed, AoE bleed. So, like you guys already know this, but Hendrickson paired with King, right, has 3 debuffs on them, so they can't cleanse and they cannot they'll lose an out gauge at the start of the turn. And here is where things start getting crazy. Okay, the crazy part comes in when the 3rd unit comes in. Alright, I haven't gotten to the 3rd unit yet. Everyone already knows that the King and the Hendrickson work really well together because 3 debuffs, and then you can fully utilize the Festival King's passive to its fullest extent. That's why both of them work really well together. But that's not the crazy part. The crazy part, okay, the flaw with this team is that, okay, again, I'm gonna assume that this is 4 turns, but I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's 4 turns. Okay, just take it as 4 turns. Okay, it'll still make sense. It'll still make sense. Trust me. So yeah, assuming poison is 4 turns. Okay, shock from Hendrickson is 4 turns as well. All right, that leaves bleed, which lasts for 2 turns only. So if poison and shock debuffs last for 4 turns each, most likely if you are to drop one of the 3 debuffs, it's gonna be bleed because it lasts for like half of the duration of shock and poison. Which is why, like, the highest probability of losing the 3 debuffs is because you do not pull like another poison card in time, and then that results in them having only 2 debuffs, which means that they don't lose the out gauge at the start of each turn, which means that they have a chance of outing. But here is where things get crazy. This is where I introduce the 3rd unit. Alright, so as you know, Green Rose passive makes it so that when an enemy reaches 5 out gauges, he seals any outs for 2 turns. Why this works so well with the King Hendrickson combo is because example, right? You go first, you get your 3 debuffs off, okay? Alright. You get your 3 debuffs off, and then let's say the enemy has like any character that has an out, okay? And then with the 3 debuffs, King will remove the ultimate gauge. He'll remove the ultimate gauge by 1 at the start of their turn. So because of that, they are stuck with 4 out gauges, and then they would have the out ceiling there. How draw works right now is this green draw works with the red coin shop Zeldris, whereby once you hit 5 out gauges, you seal their out gauge, their out skills for 2 turns, and when that 2 turns is ending, you go in with Zeldris and remove the out gauge. So once they hit 5 out gauges again, they get sealed an additional 2 turns. So basically, you're playing the stalling game when it comes to outs. But if you run these 3 characters together, he'll make like out stalling so much stronger. Just hear my theory real quick, okay? Let's say poison and shock last for 4 turns. So if you get unlucky and you don't pull a bleed card for Hendrickson, you lose the 2 out gauges, okay? You lose the ability to like reduce the out gauge by 1 at the start of the turn, so you only have 2 debuffs. But you would have 2 debuffs left, okay? You would have shock and poison on. What does that mean? That means that with King's passive, 2 debuffs, shock and poison, it makes it so that the enemy cannot cleanse. And this green draw's passive can be cleansed to remove and then use an out in the same turn when the enemy has a disable out move debuff on them. You can cleanse it. In normal circumstances, you can cleanse it and out. But the King's passive makes it so that your cleanse cards do not work. So what does this mean? It means that basically if they reach 5 out gauges and you do not have the bleed debuff, you can't reduce their out gauge by 1 at the start of the turn, you would have an additional 2 turns of stalling because he disables ultimate moves for 2 turns. You have an additional 2 turns to stall, to like use cards, waste cards, whatever, clear your hand, draw more cards, to have like additional 2 turns to draw like another bleed debuff. And when you draw like the next bleed debuff and then you manage to apply all 3 debuffs on them, you would get off the 3 debuffs and then the enemy team will just start losing out gauges again. Like he makes it so that like your ultimate, he makes it so that out stalling becomes like so much stronger, because if you get bad RNG and you don't pull a bleed debuff to refresh it, so you don't refresh the 3 debuffs, he gives you additional 2 turns of leeway. So like if you can, he gives you an additional 2 turns as a failsafe for not drawing another bleed card. And then in that 2 turns, if you don't draw another bleed card, then you're pretty unlucky, but but most of the time, throughout like that, probably like 4 turns or so, yeah, because bleed lasts for 2 turns, and then draw gives you an additional 2 turns to stall for another bleed debuff. Throughout 4 turns, you are most likely gonna pull at least 1 bleed card. So let's say if you don't get like insanely unlucky and not get a single bleed card in 4 turns, you can actually like reapply your 3 debuffs, which makes it so that they lose an out gauge at the start of the turn, at the start of their turn, like once again. So it just basically cycles around, and then you basically guarantee your 3 debuffs, which means that you'll just constantly like seal them from outs. It's like so stupid. And because like okay, after you reapply the 3 debuffs, right, they'll be losing 1 ultimate gauge at the start of each turn, right? Okay. So example, they get 5 out gauges in their turn, okay? And King removes it again, okay? King removes everyone's out gauge by 1, so the 5 out gauge character will drop to 4. And when they use a card and they hit 5 out gauges again, they get sealed by draw once again. the out gets sealed by Drow's passive once again, which means that you have an additional 2 turns to stall for your damage over time cards, may it be bleed, shock, poison, any one of the three. He gives an additional 2 turns to stall. So basically this basically like a stall cycle, which basically makes it so that like 90%, 95% of the time like the enemies do not even like get a single out of. And okay, let's talk about potential counters, okay? This team absolutely cucks Outrush if it works as well as I'm seeing it, which is really, really well. Okay, potential teams. Blue Demon melee teams, okay? Yeah, this team, you probably would want to run with Green Merlin at the back to give that additional out gauge. But if this team gets popular and people start trying to use Blue Demon melee orders to counter this team, Drow's commandment makes it so that you have resistance buffs, which makes it harder for Blue Demon melee to just completely wipe out this team. Which means that Pan teams wouldn't just completely wipe you out lah. So you can like kind of survive. But if they become very prevalent and you're running this team, then you can just slap on Red King at the back, because if, right, example, like what's the point of getting one additional out gauge if your opponent is not gonna ever out? Like if your opponent is never gonna out, you'll always get your out first, so you can just slap on Red King if Blue Demon melee becomes prevalent again. And I guess Estarossa kinda messes up the team a bit as well. But the thing is that, like, I mean, Estarossa, oh wow, words. Estarossa should work alright into this team, because obviously once he uses his stance, he becomes debuff immune. But that's like, the thing is that when you are running Hendrickson into that Hendrickson King, Hendrickson makes it so that the damage over time, like the damage over time actually hits 50% more. Like it hits 50% harder. Which means that even if Estarossa is like debuff immune, the damage you'll be applying to the rest of the team, like the 2 other units beside Estarossa, it will be like a large chunk of damage, because like they can't cleanse it off, obviously. Which is part of why Blue King and the Hendrickson work so well together. But I would say the biggest counter to this team would definitely be Mono Red, because this team is heavily reliant on debuffs. Like the whole concept of King and Hendrickson is to apply a ton of debuffs and then work off of it. But I mean, if you're facing Mono Red and he gets a level 3 alpha buff and there's like immunity, then obviously the debuffs won't work. So that's a huge counter for this team. But I mean, every team has a counter, so Mono Red is that one counter for this team. So yeah, I could definitely see this team being meta. I don't know. There's probably people who have thought about this like before me, but personally I haven't seen anyone make a video on this so far. So yeah, I'm just gonna put it out. I don't have that many subscribers, so probably not gonna be seen by that many people, but this is what I just came up with during like a 10-minute brainstorm session. And yeah, hope this like, I mean, obviously, again, I do not, my JP account isn't that developed, and I do not really care about JP that much right now. I'm just focusing on global. So like, I do not really have the resources to test this out myself, even though I would have loved to, and I would have the chance to like showcase the team in action, because on paper this sounds amazing. I just want someone to try this out and test my theory out. But this should be like probably the best Outrush counter. Best Outrush hard counter team there is as of now. I'm pretty sure, I am pretty confident I can back that up. I just want someone watching this video, aware or anything, someone, maybe like, if you can share this to like Nagato or like Citin or anyone, to like try this team out. I wanna see my theory and see if it works or not. So yeah, there are probably people who have like thought of this strat before me, but haven't seen any of it, so I would just like to put it out there because it was killing me on the inside. Because on paper it sounded so good, and I haven't seen anyone use it, so it was killing me that like I didn't know of anyone who knows about this team composition. So yeah, I'm just gonna put it out there and hope someone tests it out, and then I want to see the results. So yeah, see you guys in the next one.